Welcome to the Answers Yes podcast, where we interview some of the most interesting people that have said yes to opportunities in their life. We hope that through these stories, you can learn to create your own destiny by saying yes along the way. Join us as we explore the new series covering topics such as passion, integrity, and hard work. I'm your host, Jim Riley, and I hope you enjoy these interviews as much as I do. I believe that everyone has an important message worth hearing. Hello and welcome to the Answers Yes podcast. Hey, Happy New Year. Well, I guess we're well into the year now, the way I look at it. We're already going and off and running. Hopefully you're chasing your goals already. I'm starting the 75 Hard program again for the second time in the last couple of months. And this is my fifth time doing it overall. And I really enjoyed that program. So I want to thank Andy Frisella for putting that out there. If you're not familiar with it, well, check out some of the things that I've been posting on Instagram. It's Jim Riley, Montana, and I can talk to you more about it. Just hit me up with a DM there. But 75 Hard program is a great way to get mentally strong and maybe get fit within the process. So here we are in 2023, and it's my goal this year to bring on more great guests, but also bring value that you can get out of these shows that you can start applying them now. So when I'm looking for guests, and if you are a publicist that send guests my way, think about the value that your guests are going to bring in terms of lessons that they might be able to teach or something that they're doing that will help our guest achieve success in their own lives. And today I'm thrilled to have John Cuomo on the line today. John, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Jim, so much. I really appreciate you having me on the show and looking forward to talking with you and your guests, your audience, rather.
Now, it's been a while since I've had a member of the fire department on my show. Matter of fact, it's been all the way back to, I think, episode in the early 20s. Jack Nosko was on our show. He's from Ventura County. He's a captain out there. I think he's retired now. And we had a great discussion about his life in the department and all the things that he's done. And I'm just so appreciative personally for first responders of every nature. And I don't think that the world can do enough for our first responders. And I know you're from the East Coast, and I'm sure you're around 9/11 and had a lot of brothers and sisters that were involved with that. And I want to thank you for that. I'm sure you get accolades, but I want to personally thank you on the show for your time in the department.
Well, thank you, Jim. I really appreciate that. It's a value. So I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your background. How about you give us your story, and we'll go from there. But I'd love to hear how you got into the department and your leadership roles and where it went from there. And then we'll talk about what you're doing currently after that.
All right. Sounds good. Well, I was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. And my parents moved down to Florida when I was about 17 years old. And so it was right around a time where I kind of had to figure out what I was going to do with my life. I was working my way out of high school, and I got involved with doing some electrical work. And I thought that was going to be my goal, was to become a master electrician and own my own company. But we had a recession here in Florida, and that knocked my employer down from 25 employees that they had down to 4, with me being one of them. But the whole time I thought I was, going to lose my job. And then we were working 4 days a week, and we didn't have insurance. So I knew I needed something different because I always wanted to have a family. So I began applying in many different places, more stable job, like the phone company, the post office. And the fire department was one of them, which I didn't know much about, honestly, but I knew it was a government job. Then once I started the process of actually testing, they said that they liked me there, but I needed to get my own education. So that's how that works here. You get your certificates, and then you go back and you apply again. And so I did that. And once I went into the fire academy, I absolutely fell in love with the job. I figured out what it was about. This is what I wanted to do the rest of my life. And I couldn't wait to get into the department. And finally, once I finished my fire academy and my EMT school, which was emergency medical technician, I went and I finally got hired by a department. And, I was Jim, I was like on cloud 9 from the moment I got hired. I'd sit there in the fire department constantly I was just 21 years old, and I'd sit there going, I can't believe I'm a firefighter. I just can't believe this. And I'd ride on a fire truck and I'd say the same thing. And all the guys would around me be like, John, just shut up already. We're sick and tired of hearing it. We know you're a firefighter. You're happy, whatever. But I just was so thrilled. I couldn't, to me, it was the greatest job on earth. And here you were helping people every single day, doing things, eventually I had to become a paramedic. So we handled all the fire, all the medical, all the water response, hazardous materials, car accidents, whatever it was, 911 called, we did it. So it just was amazing to just constantly help people. And I really fell in love with the job. I met my beautiful wife when I was about 19 years old, and we dated, and still married. We've been married 30 years now, and the love of my life. I have a couple of kids. But once I got into the fire service, I opened up my book with a situation that happened where I came across something on the beach, which our island where I worked had 13 miles of beachfront. So things were always washing up, being on the ocean. And people would call about that. They'd call 911. And like I said, we handled everything that was going on. The only thing we didn't do was arrest people. Outside of that, we handled everything. So it was a situation of something had rolled up on the beach, and they called 911. And when we got there, my officer said to me, just go down there and check it out and let me know what's going on. So I ran down the beach, and there was a crowd there. And as the book brings out, it ended up being, it was a missile. And I just was stunned. I lost, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to think. I called back my officer. He didn't believe me. He started walking down the beach. But I was able to get my bearings and realize I had to care for the people, try to take care of them. And he came down. The situation, we resolved it. It ended up being a dummy missile. It was a missile that the Navy shoots off, and they kind of fire another missile at it. So it didn't have any explosives in it, but it certainly looked like one. But it just kind of made me thinking that no matter what position I'm in, if I'm in a firefighter showing up on the scene, they don't know my position. They don't know if I'm a lieutenant, a captain, a chief. They just know I'm a firefighter here to help, and I better be good at what I do. And so that really was an eye-opening experience for me. And it kind of opened up the world to saying, okay, I need to be better at what I do. And then watching other officers, some good and some terrible, I started realizing it was very important to learn how to be a good leader, because I was already stepping up into the position to lead. So those were some of the things that got me going into the leadership role.
So a few questions for you. I want to unpack a couple things that you said. And when I receive these bios about potential guests, I know that they've carefully chosen the words that they've used to describe the individual. And there's a couple things about you that I picked up real quick. First of all, you signed up for the fire department not knowing much about the fire department. It was more about you knew what your needs were and what you wanted. The love for the fire department came afterwards. How did you realize what you needed and how important that was at such a young age? Because oftentimes we chase the job, right? Everybody, I want the glory of being a firefighter, and you don't think about, the needs are the benefits that come with that. How did you know so early?
Jim, I had kind of a rough upbringing. Good sized family, but it really wasn't an easy upbringing. But I was always a family oriented individual. I knew that I wanted to meet somebody and have a family with that person. I knew I wanted children. In fact, I wanted 8 children is what I really wanted initially. But so that was really my primary goal. When I got older, I wanted to be with somebody. I wanted to raise a family. And I really had no guidance as to what job to get, how to work. I couldn't go to college because I didn't have the money to go. My parents couldn't afford to send me. So I was kind of really hanging out there in the wind, trying to figure things out. But my number one thing was I wanted to be with somebody. So once the job that I was in, it seemed to be that there were ups and downs. Like it was either feast or famine. And once I realized that, I said to myself, there's no way I can have a family and children like this. I didn't want to raise children the way that I was raised. I didn't want to have kids that couldn't afford anything. Everybody else got stuff, and you had to sit in the corner and wait till everybody was done and things like that. I just didn't want that. Not to say I wanted to be rich, but I just wanted to have something where I knew that they could take care of their education. And so that's what my number one need was I needed to have a job where I had enough insurance and enough stability that I could take care of a family, take care of my children, and make sure they had a better life than I did. So I'd always heard that government jobs had those things. They didn't pay as much, but they had the benefits, and it was solid and stable. That there was no well, it wasn't a good a chance of getting laid off because of recessions and things like that. So that was my focus, and that's what I wanted to push for. So that's kind of what drove me into those fields. And then, like I said, once I tasted the fire department, I was hooked. This is what I had to do.
Very, very fortunate you filled both your needs with one job. It talks a lot about in your bio about your passion for work stems from the people. Where did that come from? Because oftentimes that's our second thought as human nature. And for you, it seems like serving people is first and foremost for you.
Yeah. You know how you figure things out sometimes when you look backwards and you're like, wow, all along I saw those signs that this was the case. When I look backwards at my life, even when I had nothing, even as a child, I always had this desire to care for other people and to do a really good job in doing so. If I saw somebody in some kind of need, I wanted to help them. I wanted to put a smile on their face. I wanted to make their day better if I could in some way. And that was the case throughout my life. I remember even friends of mine, would kind of get on my case about trying to help somebody if I saw them on the side of the road or in need. We were going somewhere. But I just always had that desire for some reason. And once you do it, I'm an avid Bible reader, and whether you believe it or not, there's a verse in there that talks about there's more happiness in giving than there is in receiving. And once you do that for others, when you taste that joy, it really is almost like you're doing it for yourself. You really get so much passion out of helping others, and we're all humans. We're all family. If we could just help each other get to the next level, and you see somebody who's not in as good a spot as you are, and you can help bring them up a little bit. You never know what they can accomplish in their life, what the next steps can be. And I feel that with myself. I didn't have an education. I didn't have much guidance to go with. And I kind of just stumbled along trying to figure certain things out. And when little pieces came my way, I worked my way up from doing those things. And I feel like I've had a major impact on a lot of people's lives. And still, I'm hoping in the future to have even more so. So you never know when you do something for somebody else, what kind of impact they're going to be able to have. And the ball just keeps rolling that way. But you get so much joy out of it. And so I really was blessed to be able to get a job where I did that every single day. And then I tried to take it to the next level. So if I came across somebody, yeah, you called 911 and you said you were having this difficulty. And yes, I can fix that difficulty for you. But how about I fix that difficulty for you in a way that you never expected? And I took care of a situation like your mind was just blown. When I left, you not only felt, wow, the situation was taken care of, but you're like, that was the best service I've ever had from somebody. And it's the fire department. And that was my goal once I got into a position of leadership where I could affect the outcome of a call. So it is a pleasure and a joy to be able to help others. And I recommend that to anybody. If you're having a bad day today, you're listening to this podcast, or you're having a bad week, the best way you can fix it is not by doing something for yourself, is to go out and do something for somebody else. So you won't believe the positive energy that you get out of that. And it may start something going in you. You may find a whole new field, a job, some sort of thing that you really want to do in your life to help others. So I recommend you try that. And I always tell people when they say they're depressed to me, I tell them, go out and do some stuff for other people. I promise you'll get some joy out of it.
I want to reaffirm what you're saying there, John. Matter of fact, somebody just asked me this morning what my goals were for 2023. And I'm a big goal person. I said, well, the first one is I'm going to double my giving this year. And I was inspired by David Green, who's the founder of Hobby Lobby. And if you haven't heard his story, it's worth listening to or reading his story. Hobby Lobby gives 50% of their profit to charities. Wow. Now, if you don't know, Hobby Lobby is an $8 billion a year revenue stream. Wow. So we're talking about some major giving from Hobby Lobby. And I was just inspired by their giving efforts. And so I made it a point that I'm going to double my giving. And one of the things that David talks about in the book is he doesn't give to get. He gets to give.
Yeah,
Think
very
about
good.
that. It's a pretty powerful statement. So, John, I'm just really wanted to reaffirm what you were saying there. There's a statement in your bio, and I'm thinking, okay, here's this firefighter, tough guy. It says, talking about love, why a real leader should be motivated by love. Can you speak more to that? And I've already heard a little bit from your heart, so I know where you're coming from, but I'd love to hear your point on that.
Jim, through the years, I love the statement. I think it was Aristotle. He said, or maybe it was Plato. He said, "All I've learned, everything I've known is that I know nothing." You know, and here was an intelligent, brilliant man who thought all day long, philosophized, and really tried to learn things about humanity. And his statement was that I just don't know anything. And I've come to realize that about myself. I've read so many books and studied so much to learn about humanity, to learn about myself, to learn about others, and what part I could have in helping others. And what I've learned is I know nothing. But the biggest thing that I found was love, that everybody responds to love in a massive way. And I believe our human bodies are built that way. When you come across an individual that is falling in love, let's say for the first time, you see their face. I mean, their skin glows, they're giddy about life. I don't know. They could walk in, a car could almost knock them out, and take them out, but they don't even, whatever. It's no big deal. They could lose money on the stock market or whatever. They don't seem to care because they're in love. And I just think when we love each other, it does such a powerful effect, on humanity. And you think about our country. I love our country so much. And I'm sure you see, like everyone else sees, we're so divided right now for some reason, and people are at each other's throats and they don't want to hear what the other person has to say or think. But if we could just get down to the point where we just love each other a little bit more for who we are, all that stuff goes away. It's the differences that we have, the differences in our skin color, or our cultures, or our backgrounds, all that stuff just goes away when you love somebody. You don't even see that. You just care about that person and want to help them. So I'd love to be able to spread a little bit more love if it's possible. I just think it has such an incredible effect on you as a person, on all of us as humanity, starting with us, our families, our country, and the whole world. That's one of the things I'd love to do.
I appreciate that perspective. I heard this line. It was in reference to racism and our departments, our first responders, and it was something to the effect that when somebody calls 911, the operator doesn't ask what color that person is. The first responders just show up, and really disappoints me some of the narrative that we do hear out there. That's the opposite of love, right? The narrative that we have a lot of systemic racism. I just don't see that, especially from our first responders. So again, I just want to boost up our first responders and do it for what they're doing, because they don't ask what color you are before they head out to answer that call. Just to switch topics a little bit. Matter of fact, tonight I've got a group that I host. It's called the Young Entrepreneur Syndicate, and we teach entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs how to get into business and have success. My topic for tonight is discipline. And, I think that, so often we seek to be motivated, but where we're really challenged, if you dug into it, would be the discipline to do what we're doing. And you talk a little bit about discipline here, and steady discipline practices, for your employees and what you're doing. Can you expand on necessary disciplines?
Sure. Well, I would say the first thing is our habits, I think, are a reflection of our discipline. You develop habits, whether you like it or not. You develop a habit each and every day, and then you expound on those habits. So if you wake up in the morning and you drink a cup of coffee, and then all of a sudden you do that every single morning for some time, that becomes a habit. If you sleep in too long and you're waking up late, or you're going to bed late, it ends up, your body gets adjusted to that. It becomes a habit.
Mm-hmm.
So where discipline comes in, and I think Jocko Willink put it perfectly when he said discipline equals freedom. Discipline comes in, it's the opposite of the connotation that most people think of it. Most people look at it as a very negative connotation, discipline, but really it's a very positive thing in our life. When we sit down and we make a decision, we're going to do something and we're disciplined about it. We do it each and every day. It falls off. It no longer becomes a difficulty in our life. And I'll give you a little bit of an illustration. For example, think about the first time that you ever drove a car. If you're like me, I was terrified. I was a kid. I was holding onto that steering wheel with everything I had. I was looking around every second to see who was around me. And every little move to switch lanes was like a very big issue for me. I had to look 15 times before I did it to make sure, go slowly. Changing a radio station would have been out of the question because I was focused on what I was doing. I was nervous, whereas my foot is close to the brake. Well, after you do that quite a few times, you become a little bit more easy at it. And all of a sudden it becomes second nature. Now I jump in a car without even thinking. No one thinks about, I need to put the switch down to switch lanes. I need to make sure I look over here. Let me make sure I put my foot on the brake. You don't tell your foot to do those things. You don't tell yourself to. It's just automatic because you've done that over and over again. And that's what discipline can do. If you decide this year, 2023, I'm going to get up. It's going to be a healthy year for me. I'm going to eat better. I'm going to start running 3 days a week. And you automatically push yourself to do it. In the beginning, it is difficult in the beginning. You have to force yourself against something. But before you know it, it becomes second nature. And those that'll work out will tell you that. They'll get to a point where if they don't work out, their body doesn't feel good anymore. They actually feel sluggish that day and they don't feel as good. So discipline helps you in every avenue of life. And reading books is another area. If you push yourself to read more, which is, we all need to always read as much as we possibly can, bring in as much information as we possibly can. You have to cut time out of your schedule. You have to sit there and maybe you're missing your emails or you're missing your favorite show. And in the beginning, it might take some difficulty. But then you get into a routine and you start enjoying reading. And the benefits are that you start attaining all this extra knowledge, and it really helps you throughout life. And it just goes with everything. I mean, when you're a married individual, let's say as a man, because I'm a man, you live a disciplined life. You want to stay faithful to your wife. If you're a father, you want to stay as a good father. You discipline yourself to make sure you spend time with your children. That there comes time when, you could be doing some other things, watching the game or going out with some friends. But no, your children need you and you want to spend time with them. So I think discipline is the greatest of all things, one of the greatest of all things. It's not easy. It's definitely, especially when you live a disciplined life. There's times when you want to, go off the rails, and do some things. And the great thing about discipline is you can do that. So it's important that way for yourself. And then when you talk about the fire service or any business you have to be more disciplined with those that you lead as well. Now, you cannot do that, especially in the fire service. It's a paramilitary kind of organization. You cannot be disciplinary on your employees or those that you lead if you're not self-disciplined. It's hypocritical. People see through it and they look at you as a joke. Now, they still have to obey your orders, if you give orders, but it always comes back to you. We had several individuals that I worked with in the fire department that were just terrible officers. And the biggest reason why is they had no self-discipline themselves, but then they wanted to come down hard on other individuals. You need to be doing this, this, and this. And meanwhile, they didn't even know their job. And so any chance that those individuals that were getting disciplined could do to show up their officer, they took it, because they didn't want to be the one, that you were showing up when you didn't know your job. So you have to start that way anyway with the self-discipline, but you're teaching your crew valuable lessons, going out there and training as much as you possibly can. It's a discipline. You have to get out there. You have to know the tools. You have to understand how the water works, the hoses, and all these different things. It's not easy. Believe me, you want to go in there, and there's a lot of days when you're a firefighter, you just want to go in and just relax in between calls if you can. So it's a discipline to get out there. But boy, when that call comes and you know how to do your job really well, it is an amazing feeling, and you just walk through. And then when you're standing side by side next to individuals who don't know their job well, and you see it, you see the look on their face, you see how they're not handling the situation. It's also a tremendous uplift for you because you realize, okay, I have to stay disciplined, knowing my job, and this feels really, really good.
I love that. Oftentimes we don't hear that discipline has a negative connotation to it. But you're right. You say discipline, people immediately think something negative, but I also believe it's one of the most important things that you can have. And we don't often describe it as discipline. I think we really need to look at our lives and where we can apply more discipline to be better. I'm looking out my window here. I've got a ranch up in Montana where I'm raising my kids, and I see all the animals out there, and I know they need to get fed and cleaned up after. And oftentimes I go out there a little reluctantly, like, oh, I got to feed the animals again. But, you talk about finding meaning in every task. And oftentimes once I get outside there to start feeding those animals, I realize, you know what? I get to do this. I get to live the life that I created. I get to support and help and care for these animals. That's what I chose to do. I like the description that you have about finding meaning in every task. And I'd love to hear you talk about that a little bit more as well.
Okay. Yeah, when I was reading Anne Frank's diary, she said a comment. She said, life is only as difficult as you make it, or it's only as bad, something to that effect. Now, here's a young girl, stuck in a closet, essentially, an addict, and fearful all day long if they made any noise, that the people in the factory downstairs would hear them, tell the Nazis, they would be arrested and put in a camp. But instead, this young child is saying, you know what? It's only as bad as what we make it. And so she tried to make the best out of her situation. If that doesn't hit me in the face as an American in probably one of the greatest times in history where I can do just about anything, I don't, what will.
Yeah.
I teach my kids. Sometimes we go up north in the wintertime and I stay with family. And it's a common joke with my children. If it snows, which we're always hoping for, we go out there, we shovel their driveways and their walkways and things like that. And ever since they were little, I'd make them like get every inch of snow off that area. It wasn't a pathway, it was the entire way was clean. And it looked crystal clean compared to the rest of the block. Whoever else shoveled, they had tiny little paths. We had the whole thing done where they could come in and walk. And, they would say to me, Dad, what do we have to do? Well, everything you do, son, everything you do is going to be reflective of what you're going to do the next time. If you take your pride in what you're doing right now, even if it's just shoveling snow, you take pride in it. You're going to take pride in all the things that you do. You're going to find what's important. In this case, now the person doesn't slip. We know for sure that they're going to be able, our family members are going to be able to get out of their cars, walk up and down the thing, and they're going to be fine. But it also shows that you took pride in what you did. And I really feel that way. There is meaning in everything that we do. And sometimes we might have to dig for those things. And even at the very least, if it's just shoveling snow, the meaning is the pride that you take in what you do, the product that you put out there. And it just shows up reflecting. So the day comes, I'm at the firehouse and I'm tired. I had a rough week. Things aren't going so great financially, maybe. I'm there. The chief yelled at me for something. I got into it with another firefighter. Somebody said some rumors about me, whatever it may be. I get a call and I go on scene and it's another silly call because in the fire service, you get them all. You get the real emergencies and you get people calling you because they can't find their remote control or something, ridiculous like that. Now, how do I treat that person? Am I nasty with that person because I'm just cranky and they gave me a bad call? Or do I find meaning in that call and I try to teach that person? I try to still be kind and gentle and loving. I think when you see that there is meaning in all the things that we do, that it just reflects on everything we do. You take you out of the picture and it says, okay, yes, I'm having a bad day, but there's something important here for me to take care of. And then Jim, excuse me, sorry. And then Jim, you start opening your eyes to bigger things. I mean, I never really, when I entered the fire service, I never really thought about writing a book initially. But it's when I saw how some officers weren't that good at their job. Now, I don't want to blame 100% on them. It's because the fire service, at least where I'm at, there's no training. One day you're a firefighter and you take a test. Do you know this, the procedures and things like that? And the person who does the highest, he gets picked and tomorrow he's an officer. So yesterday you're a firefighter. Today you lead the group of firefighters. Well, what about training on how to lead people, on how to be disciplined, on how to write evaluations and reports and all the things that come along with that? No, you don't get any of that. You have to just pick it up. So I don't want to just point the finger and say these people were bad at what they did, but because they had no training and they chose not to see the bigger meaning of it, they were terrible officers. So I was able to see an opportunity and say, you know what, I would really love to help officers in the fire service. I'd love to help every firefighter see that their job is an incredible job, and that the more that they put into it, the better job they're going to do, and the more of effect they're going to have on themselves, their own personal families, and their crew, and those that they serve. So you start seeing bigger meaning in everything that you get yourself involved in, and how that you could be a spoke in that wheel or a part of that process.
Well, it's a good segue to talk about your book, Leadership Refined by Fire. And its title says, A Firefighter's Guide to Develop Leadership Skills, Motivate and Inspire Others, and Deliver Exceptional Care for the Public. There's no doubt, after listening to you the last 15, 20 minutes, that this book is filled with wisdom and leadership skills that people can acquire. And it's interesting too, by the way, John, a lot of things that we've talked about, we hear it in the public sector often, but we don't take it to heart. And I think your story and the way that you've presented it today is a nice reminder that these things are important, that love can make a difference and pride in the work that you do can make a difference. Tell us a little bit about the book.
Well, as I mentioned to you earlier, I got into the service, and as I saw some of the things that people, and the fact that we didn't really get much training on how to be an officer, and I wanted to be a good officer. I wanted to lead a crew because I wanted to be able to affect change on my customers, different than what I saw other people doing. So I knew that was my trajectory. I wanted to get there. And so I began reading a lot of books about how to be a good leader, not just an officer in the fire service. That's important. You have to know how to read smoke. You have to know how to put fires out. You have to know how to do all your medical procedures. So that you always had to stay on top of. But I wanted to be a good leader. I wanted to be able to lead men and women into a position and say, let's do a fantastic job here. But also, I want you, because I love the fire service so much, I want you, when I'm gone, to take over, or even excel past me and make your mark on a fire service that does a good job for all those that we serve. That's the important thing. I have an effect on the entire fire service, what I do. Because if I mess up out there, it gets into the news media and people begin to think less of firefighters. And I don't want that. I want the opposite. I want to do a great job. And if it gets into the media, then people think highly of the fire department. But not just that, other firefighters see it and they say, well, I want to do a good job also. I want the public to know that we're here to take care of them also. And so I started reading as many books as I possibly can and jotting down notes. I would see what good officers were doing that I thought worked. I saw what bad officers were doing, what I saw that didn't work. I began writing down notes of things. And when I picked up leadership skills from other people outside the fire service, civil rights leaders, presidents, Army officers, things like that, I would try some of those things out and see how effective they were at working. And so over the course of about 15 years, I wrote this book. I started putting notes together and I started writing things down. And over the last 8 years, I really hit it hard. And so I wanted to put something out there that someone could refer back to. They don't have to be an officer. Any firefighter can read this book. And I recommend it. In fact, any business person can read this book because it's filled with leadership skills for business people. And there's a lot of business examples in there actually as well. So anyone can read this. It can make them a better individual for themselves, for those who love them, their families and things like that. In my case, I know it made me a better father, made me a better son, made me a better sibling, made me a better parent. I said that already, maybe a better husband, besides the fact that it made me a better firefighter. It had an effect on all those other areas as well. And I designed it so that you could read it and you could come back as well. So you read the book and then let's say 2 years down the road, you're having difficulty with an employee. You want to get some help, some advice. You can go back in there, read the book on a difficult employee or on never lying or on, setting a good example, a positive attitude, or the different structures that are in there that you could go back almost like a reference Bible and refer to over and over again.
John, it looks like a great body of work. I've got it pulled up here on Amazon through your website. Look, I think the world's a better place because of people like you and you. And I just want to thank you for what you've shared today and your position and gratitude for others and your desire to love a little bit more, because we need a lot more of that. So thank you for that. And what's your website? Where can people find more out about you and what you're doing?
Well, you can get the book at any book place, Amazon or Barnes and Nobles, areas like that. But my website is www.fdleadership.com. Right now, I'm expanding that. The podcasts that I've been on are on there, and my book is available on there, and some other information. But I'm expanding that. I'm getting other firefighters involved and other material resources for people to be able to get to. And I'm also working on a secondary book. I'm 3/4 done with it on PTSD in the fire service. It's actually in the emergency services. So I'm putting that piece together. There is a chapter in this book, this current book, on PTSD, but it's really more of from a leadership standpoint, how to identify it and how to help those with PTSD. But the other one is going to be more of a personal book I'd love to get into the firehouses, police departments, nurses, areas like that help them to look and review, am I having some of these symptoms and what can I do? But if someone has any questions or want to talk about the book, feel free to reach out. My contact information is on the website. I'd love to answer any questions. I help people get into the fire service around here in South Florida the best I can. I recommend the job. I absolutely love it. I want to stay connected to the fire service for the rest of my life. I just believe it has such an impact on a daily basis on our society. And, our society kind of could use some really good examples, to step up and set the example, as to caring for others and doing what's right. So I recommend it. Feel free to reach out to me on the site. I'd love to hear from you. And if there's anything I can do to come into a firehouse and speak, or even to a business, I'd love to do that. Help out in any way I can. So feel free to contact me in any way.
We appreciate you. And hopefully when you're done with that second book, you'll reach back out to us. We'd love to have you on the show to talk about that. I think it's such an important topic. More people suffer than we're aware of from PTSD. Oh, yeah. All of our first responders and our veterans, and really looking forward to seeing that one come out from you. And by the way, if you're listening to the show, if you're familiar with our Young Entrepreneur Syndicate, you'll be able to hit a link in our website for John's book as well. As he mentioned, you can find it on most of the big websites like Amazon or his own website. We'll put the link in the description of the show there. So John, thank you so much for being here today and all the lessons that you've given us.
Thank you, Jim, so much. I really appreciate it. I really enjoyed getting to know you.
Thank you so much. All right. If you like the show, please share it with a friend.
Thank you for listening to today's show. It is my pleasure and honor to interview all of the guests that have been on the Answer is Yes podcast. If you have enjoyed the show, please go on iTunes and subscribe, give a rating, or simply tell a friend about the show. We also believe in the message of our guests and the positive influence of their stories. As my own mentor and coach, David Meltzer, has taught me, spend some time every day thinking and writing about the things in your own life that you have more than enough of. You will find out how blessed we really are. Please visit my website, livelifedriven.com, for the latest updates about me and what I'm doing. Plus, I post a monthly blog about the many topics on this show. This podcast can also be found there. As I learned early on in life, what you believe is what you will achieve. Thanks, Mark Victor Hansen, and thank you, and have a great week.